In the pre-dawn haze of March 3, 1943, off the storm-lashed coast of New Guinea, a Japanese convoy steamed relentlessly northward. 8 troop transports, crammed with over 6,000 soldiers bound for the reinforcement of LA, sliced through the Bismarck Sea, under the escort of 8 battle-hardened destroyers. Admiral Masatomi Kimura, commanding from the destroyer Shirayuki, scanned the horizon with the confidence of a navy that had dominated the Pacific for over a year. His ships were zigzagging in a tight formation, anti-aircraft guns primed, 0 fighters circling overhead. The Imperial Japanese Navy supply lines were the dragoness backbone of their empire village, arteries feeding isolated garrisons across the Southwest Pacific. To Kimura, this was just another routine run, a calculated risk in the face of Allied air patrols that had so far proven frustratingly impotent. But as the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, a low rumble grew into a thunderous roar. From the south, a formation of 12 shadowy silhouettes hurtled toward the convoy at wave-top height, skimming the sea mere feet above the swells. These were no ordinary bombers. Their bulbous noses bristled with Furiate, 50-caliber machine guns per aircraft, blazing in unison like chainsaws unleashed on wooden holes. Tracers arced through the air, stitching the decks of the lead transports with high-explosive death. Japanese gunners, caught flat-footed, barely had time to react before the strafing runs suppressed their fire. Then came the bombs. 500-pounders with delayed fuses skipped across the water like deadly stones, slamming into ship sides below the waterline and erupting in geysers of flame and steel. In just 15 minutes, 4 transports were ablaze, their superstructures riddled like Swiss cheese, crews abandoning ship amid screams and splintered timber. The Japanese had never seen anything like it. High-altitude raids. They could handle those with flak and fighters. But this was intimate. Bisir al-Karnachi. A bomber-turned gunship, sewing ships apart with American ingenuity and raw firepower. This was the legacy of the B-25 Mitchell's 8-gun nose configuration, a field-modified terror born from the workshop of one man, Paul Irvin Pappy Gunn. What began as a desperate improvisation in a dusty Australian hangar would rewrite naval warfare in the Pacific, turning the tide against Japan's overstretched empire. Drawing from declassified reports, eyewitness accounts, and the annals of the 5th Air Force. This is the story of how a medium bomber became a ship killer, catching the rising sun utterly unprepared. By mid-1942, the Pacific War had settled into a grueling slog for the Allies. Japan's lightning conquests from Pearl Harbor to Singapore had secured a vast defensive perimeter, but sustaining it required constant resupply. Convoys like the one Kimura led were the lifeblood of the Imperial Japanese Army. Ferrying troops, ammunition, and rice to forward bases in New Guinea, the Solomons, and the Philippines. These rat runs, as Allied pilots derisively called them, hugged coastlines and island chains, braving monsoons and reefs to evade detection. The U.S. 5th Air Force, under the command of the irascible General George C. Kenney, was tasked with severing this lifeline. Stationed in Australia and forward bases like Port Moresby, Kenney's airmen flew everything from battered B-17 Flying Fortresses to nimble P-38 Lightnings, but early efforts were dismal. High-altitude level bombing, the doctrinal staple of pre-war training, yielded hit rates below 10% against moving ships. Bombs plummeted harmlessly into the sea, or worse, alerted escorts to Vector fighters. Japanese anti-aircraft fire-efficient 25mm and 40mm guns claimed Allied planes with ruthless precision, while Zeros pounced on stragglers. Kenney fumed in his Brisbane headquarters. "We're wasting bombs and pilots on targets that look like postage stamps from 20,000 feet." He later wrote in his memoir, General Kenney Reports, something radical was needed. A tactic that brought bombers low, close enough to see the whites of the gunner's eyes, but protected by overwhelming forward fire. Enter Pappy Gunn, the unlikely tinkerer whose grief-fueled determination would arm the skies with vengeance. Paul Irvin Gunn wasn't born to be a war hero. Nicknamed Pappy for his prematurely gray hair and avuncular demeanor, despite being only in his 40s. He was a lanky Arkansan with the mechanics, calluses, and the pilot's restless spirit. Born in 1899 in Quitman, Arkansas, Gunn enlisted in the U.S. Navy at 19, serving as an aircraft rigger during the tail end of World War I. He taught himself to fly, earning his wings as an enlisted naval aviation pilot in 1923 and logging time with the elite Toffeter's fighter squadron. By 1939, after 2 decades of service including instructing at Pensacola Naval Air Station, he retired as a chief petty officer, trading uniform for civilian skies. The Philippines beckoned next. Gunn co-founded Philippine Airlines, hauling freight and passengers across the archipelagos. Emerald Isles. When war erupted in December 1941, he was trapped in Manila as Japanese forces overran the islands. Undeterred, Gunn volunteered for the U.S. Army Air Forces, USAA, flying perilous evacuation missions in a battered Beechcraft. He dodged 0 patrols to deliver quinine and ammo to the besieged garrison Amaton, earning a Distinguished Flying Cross for one such run in April 1942. "I figured if I could get in, I could get out," he quipped later. But the fall of Corregidor in May left him seething with unresolved fury. Reassigned to Australia in July 1942 under Kenny's 5th Air Force, Gunn channeled that rage into his true calling, wrench-turning wizardry. At a scruffy airfield in Townsville, he eyed the incoming B-25 CS twin-engine workhorses fresh from North American aviation's Kansas factories. These early Mitchells were fine for high-altitude work, packing a 3,000-pound bomb load in defensive turrets with 50 caliber Brownings. But against ships, they were sitting ducks. Terre Single, 30 caliber nose gun. A piche gun, drawing from his Navy days and freelance tinkering on Douglas A-20 Havocs, sketched a radical redesign on a scrap of paper, crammed the Bombardier's glass house with 4 50 caliber machine guns, add blister packs of 2 more on each fuselage side, and lock the dorsal turret forward for extra punch. Total, up to 10 forward-firing guns, synced to shred anything in their path. Kenny, a visionary who despised bureaucracy, greenlit the project immediately. "Give me something that can fly low and hit hard," he ordered on November 18th. 1942. Gunn-S team-scrounging guns, from wrecked PF and ammo feeds from supply dumps, worked around the clock in a sweltering hangar. By December 9th, the prototype was airborne. Balance issues arose. The nose-heavy beast pitched down like a stone. Gunn countered with a 200-gallon slipper tank behind the wing, extending range to 2,000 miles without sacrificing speed. Each gun got 500 rounds, a mix of armor-piercing, incendiary, and tracers to ignite fuel and ignite panic. The result, a commerce destroyer, as Kenny dubbed Itabama reborn as a flying buzzsaw. Guns 8, gun nose 4 in the nose. 4 in fuselage blisters wasn't just armament, it was psychology. Japanese sailors, trained to repel dive bombers or torps, had no playbook for a medium bomber barreling in at 50 feet. Guns hammering at 600 rounds per minute. They'll think the devil himself is after them. Gunn reportedly grinned during a test strafe on a derelict freighter off Townsville. With the prototype crescent Pappy's Folly by skeptical ground crew after a bumpy first landing, Gunn ferried it to Charter's Towers for squadron trials. The 3rd Attack Group, veterans of frustrating raids over Rabaul, were dubious. "Looks like a porcupine with wings," one pilot muttered, but Gunn demonstrated personally, diving to 100 feet and unleashing a 10-second burst that chewed a Port Moresby Hulk into confetti. Shrapnel rained 4 minutes. The air stank of cordite and triumph. Training ramped up under Captain Edlor, whom Kinney dispatched in January 1943. Pilots practiced skip bombing, a tactic gun refined from Navy skip strafing lore. Approach at 200 knots, 50 feet off the waves. Strafe to suppress A. Release 500-pounders with 11-second delays at 1,000 yards out. The bombs skipped like flat stones, ricocheting off water to punch holes amidships, where water amplified the blast. "It's like throwing a grenade into a bathtub," Lerner briefed the 90th Bombardment Squadron. "The shockwave does the rest." By February 1943, 12 B-25s were each a Frankenstein of Gunn's genius. Reinforced spars for low-level stress, parafrag bombs for declearing, and that fearsome 8-gun nose. Gunn filed reports to North American Aviation, urging factory integration. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea erupted on February 28, 1943, when Australian coast watchers spotted the convoy. 8 Type 2A transports, Teyomaru, and others loaded with the elite 51st Division, escorted by destroyers Shirayuki, Horacio, and 6 more. Admiral Kimura's force aimed to land 6,900 troops at Laya, bolstering defenses against MacArthur's looming counteroffensive. Kenny, tipped by decrypted signals, mobilized his 5th Air Force, B-17s for high cover, Beaufighters for escort, A-20s for follow-up, and Gunn's B-25s as the hammer. Bad weather cloaked the Japanese on March 2nd, scattering initial probes. But on the 3rd, breaks in the clouds revealed the quarry 80 miles north of Cape Gloucester. At 10 a.m., 5 B-17s from the 43rd Bomb Group bombed from 10,000 feet, scoring near misses and sowing chaos. Zeros downed 2, but the convoy scattered. Entered the B. Major Edouard Ted Ladner's 12 Mitchells from the 38th and 3rd Bomb Groups, thundered in at 100 feet, engines howling over the surf. Flanked by Bristol Beaufighters raking the flanks, the B-25s split into flights of 4. Strafing run guns hot, Larner barked over the radio. The lead element targeted Kyokusei Maru, its 8. Gun noses erupting in a storm of lead, 50 cal slugs traveling at 2,900 feet per second or through bridges, shredding crew and igniting ammo lockers. 1 transport's AA crew vanished in a red mist. Another listed as bullets severed steering cables. Then the skips. 4 bombs per plane. Parachute retarded to glide low. Eyewitness Lieutenant John McCarthy of the 501st Squadron recalled, "We came in so low, the prop wash kicked up spray. The bombs hit like sledgehammers boom. Skip, crunch. That ship just opened up. Kyokusei took 2 direct hits. Her hull breached. Teyomaru followed, flames leaping 200 feet. In 15 minutes, 4 transports sank or burned out of control, 2,000 troops lost. The destroyers, raked by strafing, barely fired back. Shirayuki's captain radioed in panic. Enemy aircraft attacking with unprecedented firepower. A-20 Havocs mopped up, but the B-25s stole the show Savanti of 37 bombs hit. A 46% strike rate versus the usual 5%. All 12 returned, 1 holed but flew. That afternoon, a second wave finished the job. B-25s and B-17s sank the remaining 4 transports in Syria, which exploded in a cataclysmic fireball. B-March Quattro survivors clung to rafts under P-40 strafes. Rescue Zeros were shredded. Japanese losses: 12 ships, 59 planes. 3,500 drowned or shot. Allied cost: 5 planes, 13 dead. Kimura, adrift on a life raft, was rescued days later, his empire's dragon severed. "We never imagined bombers could strafe like fighters," a surviving gunner confessed in post-war interrogations. The 8 gun noses had done more than sink ships. They'd shattered morale. The Bismarck Sea triumph was no fluke. Guns B-25s prowled the slot, the New Guinea coast, and later the Philippines, racking up 100,000 tons of shipping in 1943 alone. In August, during the Wuok raid, 20 Mitchells skip-bombed a convoy off Hansa Bay, sinking 3 destroyers and crippling supply lines. By 1944, factory B-25Js with standardized 8 gun noses plus optional 75mm cannons, Inge models, joined the fray, supporting MacArthur's island hopping from Bougainville to Lati. Gunn himself flew 20 missions, tweaking designs mid-campaign Adine belly packs for 14 guns total, or deflector plates to strafe without prop strikes. His influence rippled globally. Kenny exported the tactic to the Mediterranean, where B-26 Marauders skip-bombed Axis barges in Anzio. Post-war analyses, like the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, credited the B-25 Strifer with forcing Japanese convoys to single-ship runs, exposing them to submarines and easing the path to Tokyo. Tragically, Gundon lived to see victory. Shot down over Davao in January 1944, he evaded capture for 45 days before rescue. He rebuilt Philippine Airlines after the war but perished in a 1957 crash. Awards piled a Silver Star, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 9 Purple Hearts, but his true medal was the Pacific's turn tide. 80 years on, the B-25's 8-gun roar echoes as a testament to bottom-up brilliance in total war. Japan, architects of Blitzkrieg, met their match in a mechanic's hacksaw. As Kenny reflected, Pappy didn't just modify planes, he modified the war. In an era of drones and precision strikes, Gunn's lesson endures. Sometimes, the sharpest weapon is the one forged from fury and scrap.